1 billion children live in extremely high-risk countries to climate change. Basically, some of the research that we have done in UNICEF indicates that 99% of all children in the world, in rich and poor countries, well, that's not the correct lingo, but in all countries, high income, middle income, and low income countries, all of them are basically affected by climate change. And unfortunately, it seems that this is going to be an increasing situation for the world, and some more data there for illustrating that. I think it is always a good thing in a presentation to remember why we are investing so much, or we should invest so much in the early years of life, and why we should invest in multisectorality for the early years of life. There are 5 major messages that science give us, and they have been giving us for many, many years now, that we need to remember. The first one is that the relation between genes and environment is very, very close. We are born with our genetic material, but it's the interaction with the environment that is going to provide us give us the shaping of the brain and who we are as human beings. And that is happening in the very early years of life. And that's the second message we have. Timing matters. Time matters. So we know that the connectivity of the brain is even more than 1 million new neuronal connections per second in the very early years of life, up to during the first 1,000 years, so 1,000 days of life. That's why we know that the earlier the intervention, the most effective and the most cost effective. The third message is key for emergencies, and that's why I have highlighted it in the presentation, which is the effect of toxic stress. Toxic stress as stress caused by a repeated or prolonged activation of the stress response mechanism in the brain of a child, or by very traumatic experiences. That can completely derail the developmental paths, the development of a child, with lifelong consequences, with lifelong negative consequences that is going to affect our social capacities, mental capacities, physical capacities, social capacities, economic capacities. The fourth message is that the brain is very complex, and early childhood development is not a sector, and a child is not a sector. We need a combination of everyone to be sure that the needs of the child for development, the environments that are conducive to development, are going to take place. Also in emergencies, particularly in emergencies where there is the opposite of a conducive environment for development, which is this amalgamation of toxic stress in children and in families. And finally, very important in terms of the services that are necessary for children. All of them are important, but we have to always be sure that children receive the appropriate nutrition, and they are stimulated with good, also positive attachment with their caregivers to have that necessary development. I think that the vision for early childhood development in general in the world is quite strong right now. We have very strong advocacy at all levels, from small communities to the highest levels of policymakers. But it is not given that science and all the data that I have provided until now is going to convince the world to invest and to give priority to the early years of life. We have to continue to advocacy very, very strongly, using not only evidence, but also having vision, having strategies, moving forward, particularly in emergencies, to ensure that the development of the youngest children doesn't drop out from the agenda, from preparedness and from emergency response. We have to elevate the support to parents and caregivers, who are the ones who, as ISSA mentioned in the introduction, are the ones who spend most of the time, and they should spend most of the time, and the ones that in the biggest majority of the cases are the ones who are going to establish attachments with their children that are essential for development. We have to strengthen the services and systems, all the services that children need. We cannot just think about nutrition without stimulation, without protection, without the health services. All of them are necessary to have these conducive environments for development. And I will say the third point that is essential is that in emergencies, this is particularly more crucial because is where there is more toxic stress and where we have also an opportunity to muffle those stresses and muffle the emergencies for the youngest one who have nothing to do and certainly are the least responsible of emergencies, and to give them the opportunity to develop to their full potential. And all this needs to be measured. So data needs to continue being driven also the agenda. Right now, I have to say, in the years that I have been working in early childhood development and in emergencies, there have been a lot of changes. From feeling that I was just screaming in the desert, to have a real backup from everyone, an understanding of the importance of early childhood or the early years of life in humanitarian settings. And I think one of the most emblematic proofs of this is the inclusion on the core commitments for children in humanitarian actions. Basically, the commitments that we, the humanitarian society, or the humanitarian community, the commitment that we have done for the youngest children in emergencies. And those commitments are sum up into three commitments. There are three commitments. One is to ensure that there are inclusive access to services for children, also children with disabilities, in humanitarian settings. And that refers to all the services of all the sectors that are in contact with younger children, which is basically every single sector. Secondly, support for the parents or caregiver. Very important that they receive also the necessary services to be able to care for their children in a nurturing manner. Their well-being and their mental health is key. And I will say particularly when they are very young parents, and I make a little note there on the importance of in emergencies, pay attention to the youngest women, the youngest young girls and adolescents who are in many cases young mothers who need particular and special support to care for the development of their younger ones. And the third commitment is the commitment of capacity building, and ensure that the frontline workers, the ones who are in contact with the children, not only the parents, but the other frontline workers, many of them that they have a lot of authority over the actions of parents and children, are also receive the necessary training, the necessary information to care for the children and ensure these developmental outcomes that we need also in emergencies. There are a lot of programs that have been developed for younger children. All of them are multi-sectorals, and I'm sure that many of the participants know about these packages that include playful parenting, stimulation, but include also vaccination, registration of children, appropriate nutrition and treatment of wasted or malnourished children, etc., etc. There is all these combined packages are very much developed for emergencies, and oftentimes we lose the multi-sectoral perspective of these services that is essential in emergencies. And in that regard, not only the packages have been developed, but also there are a myriad of tools developed by NGOs, by intergovernmental organizations, by different groups that are helping with it to implement those three commitments, or to make those three commitments a reality, so we can respect the right to development of children and basically all the rights of children in emergencies. I am showing in the slide some of the tools that we are using in UNICEF, but I know that many of our partners, I mean, we use it with all partners and all around the world, are familiar with these ones. The ECD kit, which is that box that you see in one of the corners. Other tools linked to the nutrition and child development in emergencies, like the therapeutic feeding bowl and spoon, that it is used also for engagement with in nutrition counseling and engagement of parents with their children, or project play, we call it, those cartoon little toys or stimulating material that you have in the right side, which are done with recycling materials from boxes of ready to use therapeutic feeding for children that are malnourished, and we are transforming them in simple toys that really help for children under 2. And below you have 2 more tools there, caring for the caregiver, that caring for the caregiver puzzle, which is a tool that an approach that we use also in the field to engage parents for their well-being and their mental health. And the other one with those columns in green is a tool that probably many of you are familiar with, because it's a tool that has been used in the field also for many years. Is the caring for the CCD, caring for child development, which has been used much for engaging frontline workers and training for frontline workers in early development. And just to finalize, say that I have just give a big overview of where we are in early childhood development, the problems that we have, that is not, data, problems that and challenges that are presented in the field, as many times early childhood development is dropped from emergencies as they come along. And, but also I wanted to have a positive ending of the presentation, saying that in many countries we have seen real good models of early childhood development in emergencies, good responses, good also plans and preparedness plans for emergencies all around the world. That picture is from Lebanon, where right now they are using 2 different programs in the field with several partners to giving priority to early childhood development in the whole country, using nutritional platforms, engaging different sectors, but also youth platforms and social community centers to engage and provide services for parents and children. And that's in the Middle East, but I put just a few countries there on the right side that I've been involved with lately, because I think they are the array, the diversity of the countries and the diversity of emergencies where we have been intervening is remarkable, and I think give us a lot of hope for having a much more systematic response always in emergencies. For example, in the conflict in Ukraine, where there are more, I think it's right now it's like 9 million refugees. Their early childhood education as part of the early childhood development was really key in engaging parents to provide a kindergarten education, basically opportunities for learning and playful learning for children under 6. Or for example, in Colombia, where there is a lot of displaced communities, not only by violence, but also Venezuelan refugees, where I continue coming, putting into the country, and a lot of the refugees or migrants that cross Colombia, where they having using an interesting methodology with mobile and fixed early childhood development centers for children. Or finally, for example, just to give a very different type of emergency, the emergencies in Peru, where we created early childhood development taking home kits, so parents could engage and have stimulating materials at home. Or the case of Pakistan, where the 36 million people, as you know, were affected by the massive and unprecedented floods last year, and their early childhood development was really introduced as a very important priority in the country, using all array of tools that I have also showed before to reach the youngest children and their families and give them priority in the response. And with that, just a little note that I mentioned before, it is necessary to continue monitoring. We have a big gap we have a lot of research and science and evidence on early childhood development in poor contexts and also in developed countries, but there is a big gap in emergencies to show the evidence on the effectiveness of early childhood development, as well as the connection of early childhood development and some of the growing topics that are very linked to early childhood development: climate change, gender transformation, and peace building. We are monitoring in all the countries around the world, all the different areas of early childhood development, also in emergencies. And with that, I want to thank you and give the word back to you, ISSA.
Eduardo, thank you so much for this overview. I think you all reminded us about how much work we need to do still with the threats that's coming to us, especially with climate change. But also you showed that the work we're doing is also has the huge potential to pay off, especially in terms of promoting play and supporting parents. Thank you so much for your insights. Conscious of the time, also, I want to move quickly to our second esteemed guest, speaker, Erin Lee Morris, to talk about the importance of play in children's health and development. Erin has a lot of experience as an educator, researcher, and he has worked many years in children's media. Currently, he's at the he's a initiatives manager at Lego Foundation. So, Erin, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity to be here and really feel lucky to be with this panel to talk about all the elements of this conversation that I feel so passionate about. So I really appreciate the time and for people taking the time to be here and engage with us today. And Eduardo, I think that my comments here will be synergistic and build on yours in a lot of ways. But I get the fortune as a representative of the Lego Foundation to naturally talk about play and the work of play in supporting children's learning and development. So always excited to do so. As you'll have seen it in Eduardo's slides, the Nurturing Care Framework provides a really great overview map of when thinking about children's holistic learning, development, health, and the Lego Foundation absolutely sort of holds it up as a map and thinks about its work within the context of the Nurturing Care Framework and thinks of play and opportunities for play for young children as part of the how we can collectively deliver on the Nurturing Care Framework, particularly when thinking about things like opportunities for early learning, responsive caregiving, and security and safety. Again, this builds on comments and the messages that Eduardo shared early on in his presentation, but we know, and I imagine that I'm preaching to the choir here, but we know that early childhood just represents such a critical opportunity to support children's lifelong learning and development. We know that those neural connections are happening at a more rapid rate in these early years than at any other time. And because of that, it's such a critical window to step in and provide support that is needed. And when that support is not provided, it's just such a missed opportunity. So that is why we're at the table for early childhood. I think it's why so many of us are at the table. We just see it as such an opportunity, and one that historically has gone so underfunded, so under-resourced and supported, and is why we're all here. And play is such a critical part of that for us when we think about the work. I, as an American, I come from a perspective of growing up with Mr. Rogers, who famously said that play is the work of childhood. This is something I've always held dear. But really, we really think about play as one of the core and probably the main way that children and young children in particular make sense of themselves and the world around them and the people that they're engaging with in the world around them. It's such a core part of their development. To get more specific about that, though, at the Lego Foundation, we talk about play and play-based learning opportunities as supporting holistic skills development. And there's lots of different ways you could cut and slice and talk about holistic skills, but we happen to choose to frame it with the 5 that you're seeing on the slide in front of you. So we talk about play as supporting creative, social, cognitive, physical, and emotional skills development, and that these are the skills that children will need to thrive now and in the future. And play is, again, an incredible way of supporting that skills development. I just pulled some images from some activity cards of some work that we support in Bhutan, just as a way of showing quickly that we're not talking about something that's too complex here, especially in the early years, that in these early years that it's very simple, responsive and attentive interactions between often parents and caregivers who are that first teacher, first engagement point that the young children often are with. That is, it's in these very simple interactions that these skills are being developed. And as you look at these images, I could spend a whole day on this, but it is, we can point to that there is physical skills development, there's social, emotional skills development happening here, creative skills development, cognitive, like all of that is happening in these very simple interactions that are, such a joyful way to be able to engage with children, and is so natural for how children engage with the world. Beyond that the direct skills development, the direct learning development that comes from play opportunities for children, we also talk about and point to the research that has emerged over the years around play. And this is, my next couple of slides I think are particularly relevant for the conversation today, and thinking about children and families in emergency contexts. There's a growing body of research around the fact that play supports children's skill development when it comes to coping and resilience, skills that we know are desperately needed given the proliferation of emergency contexts around the world. Again, speaking to Eduardo's slides, those numbers that he shared. So again, play is a piece of this equation of how these skills can be developed. They create a safe environment for children to deal with the emotions, to make sense of what's happening around them. And this can emerge through role play, through storytelling, through all manner of play. Additionally, it is great to think about play as a really wonderful way in which families can develop strong bonds and secure attachments with one another. And that is beneficial for children to be able to have opportunities to play and to use play to develop that secure attachment, but it is equally important and beneficial, as the research is showing us, for parents and caregivers, that play actually can support their mental health and well-being, and creating safe spaces and opportunities for families to play together. Not only is helping the children and their mental health, but also the parents and the caregivers, which has domino effect consequences on then further being able to support children's learning and development, to mitigate toxic stress, and these things that we know that are so important in emergency contexts. I want to yield my time because I know that you're about to hear some really wonderful concrete examples and more specific conversation about some of these effects of play on families in emergency contexts. So I just really want to thank you all for the time, and back over to you, Aisha.
Aaron, thank you very much for this overview. I think, yes, both Eduardo and you were really pinpointing and emphasizing the importance and the early years, and investing in early years, how stimulation occurs. And I personally find it also very important to really examine the dimensions of play in different ways, and also approaching the holistically, because it's also important for us to know in supporting parents in this all dimensions all together. And then how play unlocks so many steps. I think we should all keep in mind how it really, really, builds up and have a really big scaling up effect with the simple, small interventions that we do. Thank you so much for your talk.
Thanks.
Thank you. And moving on, I would like to now invite Gabriele Brandt to talk about the healing power of play in emergencies, and we will hear her walking us through their programs and positive impacts as well. Gabriela, in the meantime, you share your screen. I would like to introduce you. She's a counselor and a psychotherapist, and Gabriela has experience in piloting and scaling more humane, trauma-informed systemic models of care. And currently, she's the head of programs at AMNA, formerly Lone Refugee Trauma Initiative, and she's overseeing international direct delivery training and capacity strengthening of programs. Gabriela, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Aicha, and thank you so much, Aaron and Eduardo, for what you've shared before and really setting the scene about why playful parenting interventions are so important and why we need to think about access and availability to quality and empowering playful parenting spaces. And we need to really be thinking in a holistic way for all of the reasons that you've both really depicted. And I agree, Eduardo, with what you said, that actually in the last sort of 5 years in particular, but much longer than that, there have been so many agents for change. And we have seen within the movement of ECD big steps forward in terms of people understanding about why this is so important and why, if you support whole families to support the child, we can mitigate against some of the long-term impacts, which is what I hope to give some examples of an intervention of today. But I think there's a hopeful message in there. And as many of you working in this field and attending today may feel like at points it hasn't felt very hopeful, despite how obvious and common sense all of this is, especially for those who are parents or love children. You think, well, this is what I'd want for my child. Why are we not making it available for everybody? I think the fact that we have seen ECD and MHPSS, mental health psychosocial support, increasingly be understood as something that does need to be integrated in humanitarian response is something that can give us a sense of hope about what we should keep working towards and fighting for as a community. So AMNA, which was formerly known as Refugee Trauma Initiative, is a proud partner of ISSA, and we're in the ISSA network. And all of our work, we do a range of work, including direct delivery, and now increasingly mainly training and capacity strengthening programs where we work with local partners who we fund and provide training and capacity strengthening towards to really support those communities who are experts in their context to create and set up or deepen the psychosocial and well-being spaces for displaced communities. And we work as an organization with children through to adults, but I'm going to focus particularly today on our ECD program called BATNA. But really the purpose of our work is speaking to what Eduardo and Aaron have just painted the picture of, is if we can find ways, and AMNA's as an organization really works with communities who are mainly still on the move. Some of them are in kind of host countries that they'll stay in. But the reason that AMNA was set up was really to explore, rather than waiting until somebody's settled, which we know on average takes about 10 years once you become a refugee, how can we provide safe and meaningful interventions that support people to start to feel safer again and with dignity whilst they're still on the move, so that some of those adverse experiences and the impacts on the brain can be reduced and mitigated against. So at the heart of all of our work, whatever ages we're working with, is really healing through play. And how do we create spaces, as the title of this presentation said, where we promote joy and a sense of belonging and a sense of community and solidarity, as well as embedding therapeutic care. So our goal as an organization is to improve access to empowering and quality healing psychosocial spaces. And for us, what's really essential to this is that they are culturally sensitive, trauma sensitive spaces. We really want to, as an outcome, we hope that people who've become refugees do not have the rest of their lives determined by that experience, even if it's an experience they carry with them forever. And so our mission really is to build globally the capacity for collective healing, to ensure that there is access for every person who becomes a refugee to safe trauma and culturally informed practitioners and spaces where they can access that support. And to date, so we started as a direct delivery organization working in Greece, and we now are working with partners currently in 11 different countries and about 35 different partners. And we train people in the way that I'll describe. And then we also additionally provide training, capacity building support to organizations and frontline practitioners in different places in the world. So I'm going to share with you about BATNA, and the BATNA model was AMNA's first attempt at taking all of our learning from our direct delivery program and codifying it into a training program. And really important to say here is that AMNA is a refugee-led organization. Our founder and CEO herself was a refugee from Afghanistan. And across all of our staff team, there are people with lived experience from different places in the world who've become refugees, including on our board and governance. So all of our programming has been influenced by and designed with different communities that we work with. And so it's a sum of many, many different parts. And, you know, we're really a learning-based organization. So we're constantly getting feedback and then adapting and incorporating it into our program. So every time we run a new program, it's an improvement on the time before. And really speaking to the main points Aaron and Eduardo brought up, that this is a whole family approach. You know, the best way that we can support children is by supporting the caregiver as the protective mechanism for that child. And we know that when people are coping with profound loss, profound overwhelm, profound grief, whatever they may be personally experiencing due to the experiences of displacement and having to leave their homes due to war and conflict and maybe their countries, is that has a really significant effect on the caregiver. So it's totally expected that caregivers may feel under stress, and some of that stress may or may not, but it may influence their capacity to be an attuned and present parent for their child. So we are not teaching people parenting skills. What we're doing is we're supporting people to kind of deepen the bond. And that can go from being present and attuned. It can also recognize that an experience of displacement is you spend so much time with your children that you can become sort of hyper dependent. And so feeling safe enough to leave your child for a little bit and to start to live your own life can be something that's very, very painful. So it's really exploring the realms of how caregivers may be affected by displacement as well. And all of AMNA's work is about community healing. So we really recognize the power of belonging, of community, and of how before you even get the therapeutic interventions, which I'm going to talk about, you can draw so much support from spending time in a caring community with people who welcome you as you are, where you can make friends, where you recognize that there's other people sharing your experience, where you can share resources, and there's immense healing that can come from that. So the methodology that runs our programs, as I said, is all about incorporating play as a tool for healing, and this is for children and caregivers. So we have children and caregivers come to sessions together. Our sessions are really have rituals embedded, and when we're trying to create a sense of safety, there needs to be a sense of predictability. So when you turn up, you need to know, what should you expect? There needs to be a ritual of how a session starts and ends. Of course, every session is different because there's different creative practices introduced, but the songs that people are greeted with, the way in which kids and caregivers are invited to say hello to the facilitators and each other, the kind of circle time at which the session starts, there's a predictability that people know what to expect. And then we train our partners in trauma and identity informed practices, really understanding the theory behind what's happening in the brain at a biological level in the body, but also what are the sociocultural ways that we experience trauma? What is the ways in which we make meaning? How does that vary from person to person? How does that vary within communities? And a lot of our work is about really exploring power relationships and identity and unconscious biases that we all have as a result of being human, where we're constantly saying, who do I feel safe with? Who do I trust? But if that influences who we welcome or distance from our services, then we're not really creating safe spaces. So that's really at the heart of our work. And then we embed practices that how to use evidence-based practices that really draw upon wisdoms from communities that have existed since the beginning of humankind, that use rhythm and music and storytelling and art, many of the practices that Aaron and Eduardo have spoken to, mindfulness and grounding practices that really help people to restore a sense of safety in their bodies. Because the impact of trauma and the impact of chronic amounts of stress is that physiologically and psychologically, it can get trapped in our body. And if we don't find ways to release some of that overwhelm, then that's what carries with us. And when we get reminded or re-triggered, that's what gets reactivated. But if we can help the body to release and to make meaning in a way that's gentle and in a way that works for different members of the different groups, then the likelihood is that the impact of trauma is going to be reduced and the long-term issues are going to be minimized as well. I'm going to play you a very short video just to give you a sense of BaitNet in practice and hear from some of the practitioners. Oh, sorry, it's not at the beginning. Sorry, apologies. Let me just go back to the beginning.
Gabriella, we can't hear the voice. Can you also share the sound with us?
You can't hear the voice.
We don't know. I think you can share from audio settings.
Thanks. Maybe it's coming through my headphones. Sorry, everybody, for the technical glitches. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to stop sharing to change the microphone settings for a minute. Okay, let me know if this works.
Let's try again, or otherwise you can share us with the link and we can disseminate the video afterwards if it doesn't work. We can't hear it again.
Traumatic event.
Does that work?
Many children enter the room.
Yes, now we hear it.
Okay, so I go back to the beginning and I apologize, everybody.
No worries at all, this happens.
Learn how to calm down.
Okay, here we go.
We support the young refugee children that have been through many difficult and stressful experiences. Our job is to let them feel safe and secure. Through free play, art, and movement, children develop coping skills that help them overcome the traumatic events. Many children enter the room anxious and they learn how to calm down and relax and to be present. We try to focus on the whole family and we involve them in our sessions and empower them by providing tools to deal with the children and support their growth. In our group, lots of children make new friends, they feel welcome, and they learn social skills, solving problems. The most important thing for me is these children to be present and confident and continue their life.
So hopefully that gave you a little flavor of what happens in the room. And so these are so we leave a lot of space, and the AMNA methodology is really about an approach. It's not saying here is a model and you must implement it like this. What we do is we train our partners in culturally sensitive and trauma-informed practices, creative expression practices, and then we work with them. So they work with their communities to say, what are the stories told? What are the songs sung? What are the rituals within your community that have support you in terms of making meaning? So it's really about becoming community-led approach. And there are these different aspects of the programming that we then support our partners to be trained in integrating, that as non-specialists, even though there's many specialists in our network, you can safely implement without having to be trained psychologist or therapist. So really a mixture of structured and unstructured activities that support children to develop creativity, imagination, but also to make meaning of some of their experiences, to bring some of the difficulties and to enact that through play, so that again, it doesn't get stuck and they can have support making sense of it. There's circle time, where there's time for everybody to check in, to be welcomed as they are, for experiences and emotions to be explored and to be validated. And then the sessions always end with some relaxation. So you saw the glitter jars, and there's lots of different activities about how we help people's brains and bodies just start to soothe again. I'm not going to spend time on this, but really underneath all of our work is thinking about the window of tolerance, which is a term Dan Siegel came up with, which is how do we help people, how do we help ourselves as frontline practitioners as well, to come back into the place within our bodies where we feel like we can manage. Everything isn't going to be okay, especially when you're a refugee and you're dealing with being a refugee and incredibly hostile, discriminatory systems that are supposed to be supporting you. But how do we stretch people's window of tolerance so it's bigger, so that actually as people deal with stress and overwhelm, they have tools and practices that help them to stay grounded and regulated? And then the impacts this have are on what's on the screen. So then we start to see a reduction in emotional disturbance, an improvement in sleep difficulties, and children who maybe have been responding to their stress and trauma by maybe bedwetting, or maybe struggling to play or not wanting to leave the house. We start to really see impacts that caregivers report. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about evaluation findings, but here are some of the impacts on children and caregivers that came through the study. So really improved self-regulation, children finding it much easier to name their emotions, to talk about what's going on for them, and children and caregivers having a shared language, much increased safety and play being observed by caregivers, and just big differences in children's behaviors. And then well-being, and there's kind of physiological ways we can see this, improve sleeping and improve appetite, reduce bedwetting. These are some of the kind of impacts of trauma that when they reduce, we sort of know, okay, this programming is really helping. So just to say before I end that a big part of our work, and we like ISSA and with all of the partners here, a big focus of our work moving forward is on creating a global healing network. So how do we recognize the work that we're all doing as part of a greater whole, which is about increasing access to these quality spaces? How do we meaningfully measure the impact of playful parenting on children and caregivers in a way that's truly identity informed? I know that Lego, I've spoken to colleagues at Lego, joy is a big part of the purpose of the play interventions at Lego as well. Like, well, how do we detect that? That's a big casualty of overwhelming stress and trauma, is the loss of the ability to kind of experience pleasure. It's so valuable when some people can laugh and experience joy and pleasure again. But how do we measure that in a way that doesn't feel intrusive, but creates advocacy messages to governments, to kind of big international organizations as well, to say this is so important to be kept at the heart of this programming intervention? And then finally, Amna's approach is really recognizing that local organizations are the ones that are going to be responding to crises in the immediate term and in the long term. And so it's so important to create ways to resource those local communities. So as AMNA, we don't go in there and set up country offices, but we really find partners who are aligned with values, and there's a good reason for why they want to set up or deepen psychosocial spaces, and then provide that training, capacity strengthening, so that beyond our intervention with them, there's a legacy that they can really carry that on in their communities. And we train groups of organizations we call hubs together. So we'll work with, say, 10 partners in a region at the same time. They then become a community of practice together, where there's shared learning, there's referral pathways between the networks. So organizations aren't working in isolation. And some of these issues that we're seeing, which is, how do we get organizations to share information, to kind of join up their working, is some things that we are exploring in practice with our partners. I'm going to stop there because I think I've gone over time. I don't want to eat into further presenters' time. But if you want to change the world, as Susan Davis says, then throw a better party. And I think ISSA is a great example of incredible network building. And that's what we would like to continue to do with everybody on this call and fellow presenters in your organizations. Thanks so much.
Gabriela, thank you. Thank you so much for this. I think it was a very informative, very good reminder about how we actually approach supporting parents in an adaptable, flexible way, and how we provide them safe spaces for self-expression and healing, and the power of play. And also, it is indeed great to be a part of creating this healing network, because without coming together, I don't think we can also overcome these challenges that is thrown at us, especially in this changing world. Thank you so much for this overview. And I think now, with especially with access and providing spaces, I think now I would like to invite Julia to really present us their work on play hubs, and which are great examples of non-formal ECC and most important learnings from their work in promoting play in different levels. Julia, may I invite you to share your screen?
Yeah, hi, Aisha.
Yes, I
Thank you.
love.
And thanks for offering me this opportunity. And my presentation will follow on very nicely from what all the others have said. And I hope I will not be repeating too much of what have been said already, but let's hope not. Let's
Julia,
see.
I would like to introduce you as well a little bit, if you
Sure.
allow me. Yes,
Yeah.
Julia has 15 years of experience as a program manager in non-profit organizations, universities, and public institutions in Italy, Netherlands, and Belgium. She's interested in early childhood and care, diversity and inclusion, and education, community-based solutions, and child and youth participation, and women's rights and intergenerational learning. And currently, she is the co-director of ICDI, International Child Development Initiatives. I didn't want to be unfair. Of course, it's my pleasure to also introduce you. And please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Aisha. So I will be speaking about play hubs. Play hubs are basically the result of the work of many organizations that you can see now on the screen. They are based in several countries in Europe, about 10 countries, but we also have them in Ethiopia and soon in Uganda, and ISSA and Romani Early Years Network, which is also an initiative of ISSA, our partners of the Toy for Inclusion program. Our dream is to have a play hub in every community, because we see play hubs as the perfect bridge between home and formal schooling for all those children between 0 and 6 or 8 years old, especially those that come from disadvantaged situations and vulnerable backgrounds. What are play hubs? They are inclusive spaces, non-formal educational spaces where relationships between young children and families from all backgrounds are built. These are spaces where they can play together, they can borrow toys and bring them home through toy libraries, they can just meet and play with other children and families in the play hubs. There are group activities and workshops, and they are run by what we call local action teams, which are a local approach to integration of services. So we have a working group made up of professionals from education, health, social services, and other relevant services in the community that all together plan and develop the activities of the play hubs. They were developed to be accessible for all children, so universal services, but to pay special attention to reach vulnerable groups. So they are developed based on progressive universalism approach. Initially, in the first year of pilot, we really focused on desegregation of Roma children with non-Roma children in 7 European countries. And then we opened them up also to refugees, migrants, children with disabilities, and children growing up in poverty more in general. The play hubs are currently in these countries that you see on the map. We recently opened the first play hub in Kiev in Ukraine, and we are in the process of opening play hubs in Poland. Currently, the play hubs that are dealing, let's say, with the Ukrainian refugee crisis are located in Hungary, in Slovakia, and in Czech Republic, and in Ukraine itself, and soon in Poland. a bit about our impact in numbers. From 2017, we have now 21 play hubs and 3 mobile play hubs. We have reached approximately 20,000 children, of which 30,000 from vulnerable groups, 9,000 adults, so parents, grandparents, and other caregivers, and about 1,500 practitioners. The results of the play hubs so far are, of course, the fact that we created welcoming playful spaces for children of all backgrounds, so promoting social inclusion. We try to improve the transition experience of vulnerable children to school, so the famous bridge from home to formal schooling. We strengthen intersectoral cooperation among services from different sectors. We build trust between families of different cultural and ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds. And especially with the work we're doing now with the Ukrainian refugees, we can really see how play hubs are providing opportunities for children and families to heal from trauma, very similarly to what Gabriella just shared with us. These are some images collected through the years from the play hubs. Some of them are also from Slovakia, for example, where there is the one on the right, bottom right corner, which shows Ukrainian grandmothers and Ukrainian young children, all in a refugee center in Slovakia, doing intergenerational activities together in the play hubs. And there are also mobile play hubs. These images from the mobile play hub that our partner is using in Rome in Italy. And there are now mobile play hubs also in Slovakia, in Hungary, and soon in Poland. When we talk about play hubs for refugee children and families, we see them offering opportunities to socialize and make new friends, to learn the local language, to express emotions and process experiences with each other, with people that have gone through similar experiences, get to know their new community, the hosting community, be introduced to education and other services in the country. So it's really the role of play hubs as an orienteering service, let's say, no? And the first place where you go and you can ask for information also about education, health, housing, and receive direct referral to more specialized services. And that's possible thanks to the fact that we have this local action team with specialists and experts and professionals from the different sectors running each play hub. The speakers before me, Aaron, Eduardo, Gabriella, have talked at length about the benefits of play. So I will skip this slide, but I would just want to focus on the fact that for us in the play hubs, what we notice is how play has really the power of bringing normality and joy to families' life, to children, to caregivers, and how this is really helping with psychosocial support and mental well-being. The role of parents and carers in play and in playful parenting is, of course, to provide the time and space to play indoors and outdoors for children, to have a variety of interesting things to play with. And many times refugee children, for example, do not have access to many toys and games. So our toy libraries play an important role because they can access high quality selected toys and receive guidance from the practitioners, the professionals working in the play hub on how to use them in the play hub and how to use them also when they bring them back to the refugee center or at home. Parents need to show interest about their children's play and observe what kind of play their child enjoys in order to support them in this. Of course, playing with their children and having fun together. And then there's, of course, the whole area of reading and telling stories to children. And all this on the continuum of learning through play, which goes from free play until guided play. So also in the play hubs, we try to provide opportunities for different kinds of play. These are examples of activities and services in the play hub. So stay and play sessions where there is mostly free play, parents-child reading sessions, creative workshops for children and parents, for parents only, intergenerational activities involving grandparents, but also non-biological grandparents, so like older people from the communities, both the hosting communities and the refugee communities, and craft and toy making activities, also trying to support the use of locally sourced materials, and so upcycling also stuff that is not used anymore, parents club and peer support groups for parents, and workshops and info sessions for parents on specific aspects of child development. We also emphasize a lot the importance of play across cultures. So we acknowledge, like also Gabriella, I think mentioned before, how play can take different forms and be ruled by different norms across cultures, and how important it is to be aware of the cultural differences of play, and how to apply an intercultural approach to play activities. And last but not least, we have a strong focus on intergenerational learning and intergenerational play in the play hubs. Play across generation is about sharing experiences, it's about sharing spaces, but it's also about sharing and transforming culture and knowledge. And this is very important for social cohesion, for overcoming stereotypes, overcoming age stereotypes, and promoting more in general integration and social inclusion, especially in diverse communities. I will go quickly through some of the publications that we have that might be interesting for the audience. All can be found on the Toy for Inclusion website, which I think will be shared, the link will be shared in the chat by some of the ISSA colleagues. So these are the basic standard publications, resource packages from Toy for Inclusion. But more lately, we published some new resources. Play for Inclusion. This was done actually in cooperation with UNICEF in Slovakia. And this is a handbook that really looks at how non-formal early childhood services can support young refugee children and families, and especially their psychosocial well-being. And it contains also a set of activity cards for children at 0 to 8 years old, which are organized by age and also by developmental domain. That practitioners can choose from when they want to organize group activities, but also individual play activities with the refugees and non-refugee children in non-formal educational spaces. Then we have the Toy for Inclusion Access for All, which is a toolkit that focuses really on the inclusion of children with disabilities in non-formal ECC services. And also in this case, we have a set of activity cards with adaptations for children with different kind of disabilities that can be used to basically organize inclusive activities in play hubs and other services. And then we also have the recently published operating guidelines for mobile play hubs, which contains another set of activity cards that only focus on outdoor play. Mobile play hubs do not only do outdoor activities, because they can also be hosted by other services in the community, so under the roof of other services. But we wanted to give special attention to outdoor play, which is often forgotten and overlooked, both in our Western countries, but also in emergency situations. And I also would like to draw your attention to the some resources developed by other organizations, which are very much in line with the ones we also developed, and some of which are mentioned also in our resources. The Let's Play activity cards that ISSA has developed last year, which are also a set of cards that stimulate and support children whose play has been affected by the war in Ukraine, and they have been also, they are being used in the play hubs as well. Then there is the UNICEF Education in Emergency Handbook with the UNICEF Early Childhood Development Kit Guide that I think Eduardo mentioned earlier on today. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Julia, thank you so much for providing all these information about the great work that you did on Play Hubs. I can see that it reminds me personally that bringing different generations and empowering communities in that sense, how we need to think really creatively and how we need to humanely think what is play and what's really humanly brings us together. And then it's also, I think it's a good reminder for us to really see across cultures and really see across intersectionality, the different backgrounds that can come together in one Play Hub. And although you have specific tailored programs in specific Play Hubs, but we can see that it's something that creates a really inclusive space for all people to connect and reconnect and create a safe space to express themselves and supporting parents. In this regard. Thank you so much. We still have some time, not so much time left, but before moving on with Mari, who will provide us a conceptual summary and provide some aspects from the global perspective, I would like to see if we have any questions in the chat. I think I can see two questions. We can take two questions. One question is for Gabriela. They said, good work, Gabriela. Happy to see the results on children. Any observed impact on parents and caregivers, if any? Just so can we hear really quickly in 2-3 minutes maximum?
Thank you for the question. I'm actually getting some of the slides from the evaluation that I'll upload. But yeah, so just so firstly, just to say that our evaluation particularly focused for the Baitner evaluation on the impact of AMNA as a training capacity strengthening organization. Even though we gathered child and caregiver impact, that's something as we move forward that we'll be particularly focusing on. But we were focusing on the pedagogy at this stage. But really, like some of the impacts on caregivers was, commented on the feeling of the space, the relationships, to be feeling welcome like as they are for themselves and their children, being in a safe space where they didn't feel that they had to kind of pretend to be a certain way. A lot of them noted that their anxiety levels, their concerns sort of diminished as they saw their children engaging in the ways that they hoped they would, or that they knew other children not affected by war were playing. Then there was reporting just about kind of really the experience of having refugee-led facilitators as well, and what it meant to them in terms of the kind of nature of the relationship of feeling cared about, especially when thinking about the kind of hostilities and the level of invisibility they experienced, particularly in Greece. So a lot of the feedback that we solicited was really focused on them as a caregiver, as opposed to tracking, for example, the impact on their own well-being in terms of minimization of different symptoms that we will look for in our future evaluations. Yeah, so that's to give you a little bit of a summary, and I'll upload some of the slides that speak to this in detail.
Thank you so much. Well, now we don't have too much time to provide in-depth answers, but we will be happy to circulate later on. And if the audience has further, if they are interested in further following up, they can reach out to us. And also I have a second question for Julia. Who funds the Play Hubs?
Yeah, so the Play Hubs were initially developed as part of 2 European grants. The first one was a Roma integration fund grant from the European Commission from 2017 until 2019. And then it was another European grant, but an Erasmus grant focusing on social inclusion until 2020. And since then, we had grants from different international foundations as well as national foundations and other private donors. But since 2020, basically every national coordinating partner is taking care of their own fundraising, and SEDI is working on the international level of fundraising to cover our role as international coordinators and quality control, monitoring, and evaluation aspects of it. Yeah, and maybe it's important to mention that about 60% of the play hubs that we have established were able to sustain themselves at the end of grants that were initially received, because their value was seen by local municipalities and other local authorities, also thanks to the very good work done by the partners in promoting the existence of this service and lobby and advocating for them. And so they are now on municipal budgets, so at least fully or partially on the budget of municipalities.
Thank you so much, Julia. I'm quickly checking. Thank you, Gabriele, for sharing some of the resources, I suppose the images there. And I can see that we're running out of time for more questions. So I'd like to give the floor to Mari to provide us an overview of the topics we discussed today, insights and learnings from the global perspective. Mari, while I'll invite you to, well, you will not use slides. I would like to introduce you. Mari has more than 15 years of experience in international and domestic programming, policy and advocacy, focusing on early childhood development, education, and parenting in crisis contexts and displacement. And now she's currently the technical advisor, Parenting in Crisis at Global Initiative to Support Parents, in abbreviation GISP. So Mari, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Aisha, and thanks to ISSA for inviting me to participate in this fantastic webinar. We've learned so much. It's going to be a challenge, I think, to sum it up quickly. But first, just a little bit about the Global Initiative to Support Parents. It was launched in 2021, and it's a partnership between many of the organizations here, UNICEF, WHO, Parenting for Lifelong Health, ECDAN, the ECD Action Network, and the Global Partnership to End Violence. And it was brought together on the urgent agenda to ensure every parent and caregiver around the world has access to parenting support. One of the things that GISP will be doing, it's GISP as the acronym, is launching a new website, a global platform next week that will bring together parenting resources and tips and recommendations. Many of the resources that were shared today, I hope will be posted on that website. And it's really meant to be sort of a comprehensive resource for parenting work across the life course. So from the early years, but all through childhood. So please keep an eye out for that. There's a town hall on the 27th. If you'd like to join, go to the ECDAN website and you can sign up for that. So talking about, looking at what we were discussing, I think such inspiring and innovative approaches to early childhood and to playful parenting. I think more than anything, you really highlighted the benefits, the many different benefits that play affords to children and caregivers and families in crisis. We know from Aaron and from the Lego Foundation a lot around how play develops cognitive skills, learning. One of the ways that children understand the world around them and begin to explore the world around them is through play, and making meaning of where they are, what they're doing, which is, could be a new circumstance, and the experiences that perhaps that they've gone through, some of which may be very difficult. But some of the other, I think, aspects of play that were captured are also really interesting, in terms of play being healing, which both, I think, Gabriella and Julia mentioned. The healing aspects of play, not just for the child, but also for the caregiver. And we know that caregivers also benefit from those interactions, the serve and return, or the back and forth interactions between children and the caregiver, and how that really strengthens that essential bond, which for the early years, as Eduardo and Aaron both touched on, is so critical, because that's when the brain is developing most. And many of the experiences and influences of the environment that children have in those very early years will impact them throughout their lifetimes. So critical to intervene early, and that was a message I definitely heard. Also, the elements of the physical development of play, right? We know that play improves just motor skills and the physical growth of the child, but also how trauma is held in the body and how play helps to release that and get that out, or else it can be stuck there. And that's something that's, I think, being learned more in the areas of mental health, but it's so important for young children and for caregivers, and all the ways that you can do that. And again, the program's focused on providing movement and rhythm, physical activities, dancing, things that you can do to really get that out and to promote creative expression as well. And then the social links, I think, are often overlooked as well, right? So we know that it strengthens the bonds with the child and the caregiver, but also with other peers, and it creates that connection, between a play hub or a BETNA ECD program, where it's bringing together families from different backgrounds, perhaps even speaking different languages. And by bringing caregivers together to focus on something that they all care about, right, on their children and their children's well-being and development, it starts to create that kind of social cohesion that gets to the triple nexus, Eduardo, or the peace building aspects of early childhood development and of learning together through play, that can have long-term benefits, and perhaps start to stave off some of the conflict situations that we are seeing across groups. And I really love too that Julia, I think, mentioned the importance of the cultural differences of play. And this is really important too, is, we might come to the idea of play as, needing to have certain resources or toys available or spaces available. And that's not at all necessarily the case. And play can take many different forms. You can make your own toys from the materials that are easily available or free, or upcycling. I love that from Julia. And there are also other forms of play, that might happen with, indigenous cultures that maybe doesn't look to us like play, but it could be children interacting with their caregivers in their daily routines, going to the market or helping to cook in the kitchen. All of these things are ways that children are learning by doing and by interacting. And it's important that we recognize those and build on those strengths that caregivers and families bring with them already. So we're not just teaching them something entirely new, but drawing on the strengths that they bring to the table, and showing them they do have that agency and they do have those skills already within them, to be able to shore up the resilience and the well-being of their own children. I think, and finally, that really important, of course, is the idea of joy and pleasure and laughter through play. Something, again, that's probably in short supply in many humanitarian contexts, but is so important to bring back that sense of normality, of safety for children, of being in a safe environment where they can relax, be soothed, and start to go back to the business of growing up, which is what they should be doing. So thank you for emphasizing that as well. I think there were so many resources and tools that were mentioned. They're in the links are in the chat. I won't try to bring them all together here, but lots of great stuff happening in this space. And I think now, Eduardo mentioned the early childhood space has sort of been growing momentum over the last number of years, thanks to groups like the Moving Minds Alliance and some of the big investments that have been happening for early childhood. And I think we're going to start to see that as well in the parenting space, as people start to realize, particularly after the COVID-19 crisis, the critical importance of parents as providing this public good of parenting for children, and as really the everyday heroes, of children. So hopefully we'll start to see that similar kind of momentum, and these worlds can come together, and we'll see more investment and greater delivery and attention in humanitarian response to caregivers and the caregivers' well-being and resilience and their own mental health, so they can support the children and provide nurturing care. I think with that, I will close up. Aisha, Thanks so much again.
Mari, thank you so much for this amazing overview. I think you touched every aspect that was talked about here, like the child development aspect, the brain development, early stimulation, and how what challenges are awaiting us, or what are the opportunities in ECD in humanitarian settings, and how we're bringing access more through programs like Bettina or Betina, sorry, or Play Hubs. So thank you for bringing this all together, and it shows us that again, it reminds me and that we need to keep advocating, and we need to keep connecting our networks and powers in this endeavor in supporting parents eventually for children's well-being. Thank you so much. I would like to slowly close the session. Thank you so much. A sincere thank you all to all our speakers. We are very happy that you could make it today and really enlighten us with all this information and knowledge, and then reminding us the importance of this work that we're doing. And also to participants who joined this event today. It has been really great to learn about the power of play, and it's also a good reminder what we can achieve when we think in together and share experiences, and really have a goal in making building this peace and supporting people instead of every adversity that's coming our way currently in the given time in the world. And there were some questions also in the chat. I would like to let you know that everyone will get a follow-up email in the coming week with the link to the recording of this meeting and slides and resources. So don't worry, we will disseminate the resources and the recording. And if you'd like to stay in contact, please, we invite you to explore more. We invite you also to subscribe to ISSA newsletter, where you can quickly, easily scan this barcode, but also you will receive, as I said, more information. Soon, I'm happy to announce also that we will publish a video series on YouTube on playful parenting, tailored primarily for parents, but also practitioners. Also within this playful parenting project that we are collaborating with Lego and UNICEF. So I wish you all great rest of the day wherever you are based, and hope to be together in the following online events all together.